Northeast, the Honorable Matthew Samuda, and then he will be followed by the Member of Parliament for St. Catherine Northwestern, Mr. Damian Crawford. So, Madam Speaker, if it pleases you.
Thank you, House Leader. We would have, let me first ask that we vote to move straight to public business, and then we will recommit all the items on the agenda. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. The time limits already having been established in our sitting last week will not need to be repeated. Please be reminded of the time limit. I will repeat it. It would appear for the last time for the benefit of everyone. So, ministers, your usual time is 45 minutes and an additional 15 minutes has been approved. So your limit is no more than 60 minutes or an hour. And in the case of the opposition spokesperson, it is 30 minutes and you get an extra 5 minutes, so 35 minutes. Members, please, I will be adhering strictly to the time. Please make welcome the Minister of Water and Environment. The Minister represents the seat of St. Anne Northeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister, I am sorry to interject. For the benefit of all the members, when your time is up, you will only hear the bell go off so that you will recall that you are now going into additional time. I'm asking you to just continue with your presentation. Don't have the bell break your stride. Just continue when it goes off. All right. You guys major in the minor a lot though.
Madam Speaker.
When the buzzer goes off, since you don't like ringing the bell, because it's a bell. Yes, anything you would like. So when the buzzer goes off, you will just continue in good stride. And you do not need to sit or wait for additional time. So you're comfortable continuing your presentation. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I rise today to make my contribution to the sectoral debate in this honorable House, I'm privileged to stand here, firstly, because of the blessings of the Almighty, but secondly, because of the trust placed in me by the constituency of St. Anne Northeast. I pause to acknowledge my councillors, constituency executive, management team members who are present here today. I also use this opportunity to etch in the annals of history the work, the impact, the ambition, and the intended legacy of the young but dynamic Ministry of Water, Environment, and Climate Change that I now have the honor and privilege to lead. I welcome senior members of the ministry to the Parliament today, including the Permanent Secretary Wayne Roberts and our Director General Sharon Morrison, CTDs, and team members who are also here today. I also welcome members of the boards of management and senior team members of the agencies and departments, also under my supervision. Madam Speaker, I also use the opportunity to welcome guests from the World Bank Water Sector team who are in Jamaica on a particular mission, but have joined us this afternoon. We extend welcome to them as well. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank the Most Honourable Prime Minister for the trust he once again placed in me to manage these critical subject areas. Madam Speaker, there are many persons who deserve an expression of profound gratitude. It is my hope that they are not slighted by the lack of mention because of the time constraints this afternoon. Madam Speaker, as I begin, I pause to reflect on the words of the Most Honourable PM when he made it clear that this government and this budget is about building forward together and that we are moving from simply resilience to resurgence. This resurgence is a precise intention of this ministry, an intention, Madam Speaker, that will be made real through intentional service, environmental stewardship, and the development of climate-resilient water systems. Madam Speaker, the ministry was created because climate change, water security, environmental protection, forestry, ocean governance, and the blue economy require dedicated singular focus. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to report that in what can only be described as a remarkably short period, that through partnerships coordinated by this ministry, we have already mobilized tens of millions of US dollars in climate and adaptation financing, coordinated a national recovery of major water systems after the most disruptive disaster ever recorded in Jamaica, provided timely information before, during, and after Hurricane Melissa that not only saved lives but also gave our people hope and guidance. Importantly, Madam Speaker, this ministry has also allowed Jamaica to assume leadership roles in the global environmental agenda and entrenched our position as a credible, bankable partner and thought leader in global climate and environmental stewardship. I reiterate and emphasize, not only for the members of this House, but moreover for the people of Jamaica, that climate resilience is not an expense. It is an investment in Jamaica's survival, stability, competitiveness, and indeed our resurgence. Madam Speaker, the challenge is great, but the resilience and ingenuity of the Jamaican people are equal to the task. Madam Speaker, I'm also pleased to advise this Honourable House that all boards under the purview of this ministry have been duly gazetted. Cabinet approval has been received and board members have been appointed, ensuring that the governance structures responsible for overseeing our agencies and delivery of this critical program are fully constituted and operational. Madam Speaker, today I will provide an update on Jamaica's climate change agenda. This is not simply a policy discussion. It is about protecting livelihoods, strengthening economic resilience, and ensuring that Jamaica remains prepared in the face of intensifying climate impacts. Madam Speaker, over the period of 2020 to 2025, Jamaica has experienced an escalation in climate-related events. The passage of Hurricane Beryl in July 2024, Hurricane Melissa in October 2025, resulted in widespread damage and disruption across several parishes. These events, alongside severe drought conditions between 2020 and 2023, caused significant damage to infrastructure, agricultural, and coastal systems, while having a severe economic impact. Road networks, water systems, and electricity infrastructure were impacted. Smallholder farmers and experienced crop losses, and coastal communities face storm surge, flooding, and erosion. These impacts are not isolated. They directly affect productivity, food security, and national stability. Madam, every dollar spent on recovery is a dollar diverted from the development agenda. And this is why climate change must be treated as a core economic issue. Madam Speaker, Jamaica strengthened its climate governance net framework in 2023 through the approval of the Climate Change Policy Framework and Emissions Policy Framework. These provided a coordinated national approach across sectors. Madam Speaker, the development and passage of climate change legislation will mark a significant step in strengthening Jamaica's governance framework. The ministry is partnering with the UK FCDO to deliver this legislation, which will provide legal backing for climate policies and ensure accountability across sectors. This is essential for delivering sustained and measurable outcomes, greater transparency, and improved policy implementation and increased investor confidence. This legislation is expected to be complete this fiscal year. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's long-term emissions reduction and climate resilience strategy, or otherwise referred to as our LTS 2050, completed in July 2025, represents our vision for Jamaica as a climate-smart, resilient country. The strategy outlines Jamaica's pathway to achieving net zero emissions by or before 2060, while ensuring that economic growth remains inclusive, sustainable, and resilient. Madam Speaker, what distinguishes the LTS is not solely an environmental strategy, it is a developmental strategy. It focuses on a whole of economy approach and includes focus on the energy systems, transport, agriculture, infrastructure and urban development, as well as forestry and ecosystems. The LTS projects approximately 13.9 billion in net economic benefits by 2050, along with the creation of 26,000 jobs, particularly in green and emerging sectors. Madam Speaker, these are not just projections. They represent a shift in how Jamaica positions itself in the global economy. Importantly, the LTS is aligned with our NDC and other national priority policies, ensuring coherence across short and medium and long-term planning. Madam Speaker, in 2025, ahead of the deadline, Jamaica also submitted its nationally determined contributions to the UNFCCC, which is a requirement of the Paris Agreement. This, Madam Speaker, saw an ambitious target of Jamaica committing to 41% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2035, relative to a business as usual scenario. Our NDCs focused on energy, transport, forestry, and land use, and for the first time took a valuation of the carbon capture capabilities of our mangrove forests. Madam Speaker, between 2024 and 2026, Jamaica advanced its approach to food security through the development of a climate-informed, multi-scalar mapping system in partnership with RADA and the Climate Technology Center and Network under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. MWEC led the project, raising $250,000, but partnered very closely with RADA, Madam Speaker. This is important for centralized data on agriculture, climate risks, and food security, allowing decision-making at multiple levels, national, parish, and community. This means we can now identify with much greater precision the areas most vulnerable to drought, flooding, and production shocks. Madam Speaker, the Adapt Jamaica project represents a major investment in climate resilience for the agriculture sector. With US $50 million secured through the GCF, this initiative will benefit over 700,000 Jamaicans, particularly smallholder farmers and rural communities. And the member from Southwest St. Elizabeth can attest to the fact that $40 million of this is indeed grant funding, for that we are particularly proud. This project targets strengthening and resilience of the agriculture sector, and we are also supporting income generation. This initiative demonstrates how targeted investments can deliver both environmental and socio-economic benefits. Madam Speaker, the government has transitioned from planning to implementation on its electric mobility. On January 20th, 2026, a validation workshop confirmed the structure of a pilot program under the NDC Technology and Economic Cooperation Program. This program has deployed 3 standardized 12-meter battery electric buses across UTEC, CMU, and HART. These buses are designed to meet real demand with passenger loads ranging from 25 to 50 persons per trip and daily travel distances up to 240 kilometers. Madam Speaker, we further focused on developing what is called JA-NAP. This is our National Adaptation Plan. In this regard, the development of Jamaica's first comprehensive NAP, or JANAP, represents a critical pillar of our national response. This work is being advanced in collaboration with the PIOJ and is a priority for completion this financial year. Madam Speaker, the JANAP is not simply another policy document. It is an implementation framework. It is designed to move us from fragmented project-based interventions to a coordinated whole-of-government approach to resilience building. The plan focuses on sectors such as water, agriculture, coastal zones. Madam Speaker, the strength of the JANAP is that it is being implemented by the PIOJ, who also developed the JSRAT tool, which is a systemic risk assessment tool. Therefore, the NAP will be grounded in data, risk assessment, coordinated vulnerability mapping, economic analysis, and climate projections to ensure that investments are targeted where they are most needed. Importantly, Madam Speaker, it integrates gender considerations, stakeholder engagement, and investment planning. Madam Speaker, the development of carbon markets, of our carbon markets framework, presents a significant opportunity for Jamaica to access new revenue streams, while encouraging the growth of clean technology developments and installations across various sectors by participating in global carbon markets. Jamaica can attract investments and simultaneously support emissions reduction projects. For local businesses and entrepreneurs, this framework creates opportunities to participate in the green economy, as among other things, it supports technology transfer and economic diversification. Madam Speaker, we intend to finalize this framework this year. I won't speak much about the Loss and Damage Fund because I would have provided a statement to this Honourable House before, but just as an update, the country has submitted its first request for funds from the Loss and Damage Fund to the tune of $20 million, and we expect a formal decision in June of this year coming from the damage of Hurricane Melissa. Madam Speaker, the government, through the Development Bank of Jamaica, continues to push the throttle to position Jamaica to better access global climate finance opportunities. By aligning with international financing goals, Jamaica will be better equipped to secure the resources needed for national development. Madam Speaker, Jamaica will this year complete preparations for the launch of its own Blue and Green Fund to be housed at DBJ. We expect this to be primarily financed by the GCF, and Jamaica targets over $150 million investment in this fund that will finance blue and green projects across varying sectors. Madam Speaker, the state of the environment. The global context is unambiguous. The United Nations Environment Programme has characterized our predicament as a triple planetary crisis: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. These are not abstract threats. They are converging risk multipliers. Climate change intensifies storms and droughts, biodiversity loss erodes ecosystem services like coastal protection and food security. Pollution of both air, land, and of course marine undermines public health and economic productivity. Small island developing states like Jamaica are on the front line. Sea level rise, coral bleaching, coastal erosion, and extreme weather events impose fiscal burdens and disrupt livelihoods. Our policy posture, therefore, must be anticipatory, science-led, and economically disciplined. This you have heard from me in this House before, Madam Speaker. However, I think it's important this afternoon to introduce the concept of planetary boundaries in this Honourable House. This graphic shows the current state with only two boundaries globally not being exceeded. The planetary boundaries framework highlights the rising risk from human pressure on 9 critical global processes that regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth. Crossing boundaries increases the risk of generating large-scale, abrupt, and irreversible environmental damage. The impacts of these changes will not necessarily be immediate or drastic, but together the boundaries mark a critical threshold for risks to society and the biosphere we are a part of. Members of this House and those listening at home should be clear that this is already having an impact on Jamaica. But Madam Speaker, I also believe we must be unambiguous in acknowledging the current state of our environment. In some areas, Jamaica has led the world. In other areas, we are behind. Only by acknowledging the problems, similarly to the way the MHPM and indeed the DPM have approached crime in this country, can we solve them. Above is Jamaica's ranking as assessed by Yale University in their 2024 assessment. Jamaica sits at 68 out of 180 countries assessed in the overall ranking. Good. However, important for us to confront the areas in which Jamaica is not assessed to be progressing at the right pace. For colleagues' information, areas such as climate change we're ranked number 23 in the world in our management of the subject. Marine protection, 27. But there are areas of particular challenge. Certainly, waste management, our red list index, we are at 164 and 138 respectively. So this gives you an idea of where we have to focus. The areas we're doing well, we want to entrench the work. The areas we're not doing well, we want to invest more and give greater focus to ensure we move up the ranking and indeed protect our environment. Jamaica's standing provides a useful benchmark. While we have had gains in areas such as protected area coverage and indeed waste management and ecosystem vitality, the EPI underscores a central truth. Incrementalism will not suffice. We require systemic interventions, better enforcement, stronger data systems, and targeted capital investments. Our current regulatory focus. Our regulatory framework is anchored by the NRCA Act and administered through NEPA. Complementary statutes include the Wildlife Protection Act, the Forestry Act, the Water Resources Act, the Beach Control Act, and the regulations governing air emissions, effluent discharge, and solid waste. And that's important to understand. The present focus is threefold: enforcement integrity, standards modernization, data, and transparency. Madam Speaker, that is why I'm happy today to have tabled in this honorable House the overarching protected areas policy white paper, which is within your package, and the draft keys management policy green paper. The overarching protected areas policy will replace the 1997 protected areas policy and will provide the policy direction for the effective management of the country's protected area system. It should be noted that the island has over 350 protected areas, including national parks, marine parks, fish sanctuaries, forest reserves, and forest management areas, which have been declared under various pieces of legislation. Madam Speaker, in further bolstering the country's environmental legislative framework, the Ministry, in collaboration with the Forestry Department, is advancing the repeal and replacement of the Forest Act. This new piece of legislation will include provisions that specify transfer of land, inventory, and the classification of forests and forest land, and a declaration of a no-burn season. I'm happy to report that the Forest Bill is before the Legislative Committee of the Parliament and will be tabled in a matter of weeks. Legislative Committee of the Cabinet. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the Ministry will be advancing the amendment of the Wildlife Protection Act. In this regard, a draft bill has already been prepared and is being reviewed. It is my further intention to have this bill tabled before the end of Q1 of this financial year. Madam Speaker, the passing of this bill will clear the path for honoring of the government's commitment to finally ratify the SPA protocol. Madam Speaker, additionally, the government will complete the long-awaited environmental impact assessment regulations under the NRCA Act this fiscal year. Madam Speaker, our strategic environmental focus, and I have circulated the digital document, focuses on several areas, including increased protection and indeed waste separation, emissions focus on air quality, and of course, improved beach access. And I will go through them as quickly as possible considering the time. But Madam Speaker, I do want to bring colleagues' attention to the fact that this year, the government will complete 5 new protected areas, including sections of Bengal, the Negril Environmental Protection Area, Long Mountain, Montpelier, and Canoe Valley will be completed this fiscal year. Additionally, the Ministry, in collaboration with the Forestry Department, has declared 17 new forest management areas under the Forest Act last year, in the last just concluded financial year, and is working on finalizing the declaration of 22 new forest reserves, which I intend to table in the House in the second quarter of the fiscal year. Madam Speaker, colleagues would recall a discussion we would have had in this House related to the declaration of the Constant Spring Golf Club as a forest management area to preserve the green space for generations to come. I'm happy to report that the document is at the printing office to be gazetted, so that commitment represents a commitment which has been kept. Jamaica has already protected 25% of its landmass and 15% of its EEZ. We expect to complete the 30% target, which is in line with global standards, well before 2030, and we are working to catch up on our marine protected areas. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's waste stream remains largely commingled, driving landfill pressure and marine leakage. We are implementing source separation, organic, recyclable, and residual streams, supported by public education, infrastructure rollout, and private sector participation. Madam Speaker, the government this year will advance a full national pilot for waste separation in public facilities. Madam Speaker, another area of concern is air quality. It is a public health imperative. We are tightening emission standards at stationary sources enhancing vehicular inspection regimes, and piloting low-cost sensor networks to complement reference grade monitors. The policy objective is measurable to reduce PM2.5 and nitrous oxide exposure, especially in urban corridors and near industrial clusters. Madam Speaker, the government will advance plans for the introduction of tailpipe testing this year. Another issue that has dominated public discourse is the issue of beach access. Now, I believe it may be easier to have a ministerial statement to go through this particular section at a later date, but I would like to make a few points in summarizing the section that I have, even though I've circulated my notes on the subject. The Beach Control Act was passed in 1956 and was amended in 1973. 1973's amendment moved us to a licensing-based system. The policy attempt started in 1997 to deal with the access issues and was largely abandoned in 2000 because of a lack of consensus. So what you have is a period of policy blackout. What we have sought to accomplish with the new beach access policy and evolving the arrangements related to the licensing regime is to ensure that access is no longer incidental, developers are now part of the solution, and the policy is indeed implementable. Though the Beach Control Act still governs, this policy has embedded access into planning law mechanisms, has converted policy goals into administrative requirements, and forced alignment between tourism development and public rights. Madam Speaker, this policy has guaranteed windows and corridors to the sea, while clearly stating where Jamaicans have access to the foreshore. Beyond that, the commitment has been made in this House to ensure investment is made in the development of new public beach parks, some of which I know the member from East Central St. James will no doubt mention, including Prairie Beach, Madam Speaker. We have some major projects that I would like to highlight, Madam Speaker, under the environmental portfolio, which include the Relief Project launch by the Forestry Department, the Negril Coastline Works and rewetting of the Negril Morass, and of course, restoration works at Helsha, and the development of a river control authority and a keys control authority. Madam Speaker, our forests were decimated by Hurricane Melissa. The Forestry Department has developed a strategic framework for how we will approach helping nature along. I'm happy to report that as at the end of June, we would have replanted some 300,000 trees already, Madam Speaker. There is far greater detail. I encourage colleagues to read same. I want to bring your attention to works that are underway in Negril. We would have completed our design for the canals that will re-wet the wetlands. Now, this is incredibly important even for shoreline stabilization and protecting what is a natural asset that is the envy of the world. That work, in terms of building the canals, member from Western Westmoreland, will commence this year. We also intend to complete our transaction work for the development of what is called an interpretive center in Westmoreland. Now, that will be in the Royal Palm Reserve, which would have been built by Mr. Siaga in the 1980s. We'll be renovating this area and ensuring that indeed we have an area where persons are able to go and study our endemic species, watch birds, and take river tours. Madam Speaker, another focus of ours is ensuring that the regulatory system can indeed be brought to life. That is why the government, through the ministry and indeed NEPA, will be developing a river management authority and a keys management authority that will be housed at NEPA. The River Management Authority will focus on risk mapping and early warning, sediment and debris management, enforcement against encroachment. The Keys Management Authority is necessary to ensure coordinated management of our keys, which are a sensitive ecosystem, but also incredibly valuable economically. Another area of focus of the ministry under the environmental portfolio, Madam Speaker, is indeed marine governance. The government of Jamaica is focused on ensuring that we stand up the operations of the National Council on Oceans and Coastal Zone Management. And I think in the interest of time, I will bring a ministerial statement for that because of its importance for marine spatial planning, blue economic development, pollution control, and effective ocean governance. Madam Speaker, I'm sure many colleagues are particularly interested in the water section of the portfolio. But if we don't protect the environment, you don't have any water. So, indeed. Let me say this plainly, Madam Speaker. Water is not a line item. Water is the economy. Every sector depends on it. Irrigation for our farmers, industrial and commercial operations, tourism and construction, health, the basic dignity of every household. Without water, there is no economic development for Jamaica. It is for this reason that the Andrew Holness-led administration has been investing in your water supply at a rate not seen since the 1980s and not seen previously to that since the 1940s. I want to begin with something that this House and every Jamaican listening should be proud of. Just days ago at the World Bank Spring meetings in Washington, Jamaica stood among only 14 countries in the world, 14 first movers, to launch a national water compact under the World Bank Water Forward initiative. This global platform was launched April 15, 2026. Its ambition is simple but enormous. Water security for 1 billion people by 2030. Jamaica's water compact is not a vague aspiration. It is a signed national commitment to achieve universal access to safe, reliable, and affordable water and sanitation by 2030, to reduce non-revenue water, expand sewerage coverage, improve energy efficiency, protect our watersheds, and mobilize $5 billion in sector investment, inclusive of more than $1 billion in private capital. Madam Speaker, the opposition knows this. They spent years in government, and the investment was simply too limited, and it forced the deterioration of the infrastructure. They watched NRW climb, they watched coverage stagnate, they produced studies, held consultations, and left us with infrastructure in some places that had not been replaced previous to the 1940s. We inherited that, and we're fixing it. We formed government in 2016. At that time, less than $1 billion Jamaican dollars was being invested annually in infrastructure this year, across MDAs. Across MDAs, Madam Speaker, this year, the government will invest in excess of 15 billion Jamaican dollars. Madam Speaker, water does not begin at a tap. It begins in our rivers, our aquifers, our watersheds. Before a single drop reaches any household or farm, someone must protect that resource, allocate it fairly, and ensure it will still be here for the generation after us. Madam Speaker, the Water Resources Authority was established under the Water Resources Act of 1995. They operate over 100 river gauging stations and hundreds of groundwater monitoring sites across the island. They issue and enforce the licenses that govern how water is drawn from our sources and are the first line of defense against over-extraction, aquifer depletion, and saline intrusion. Madam Speaker, this administration places the WR's mandate at the very center of our reform agenda, because you cannot deliver water security if you are not protecting the resource that makes it possible. Jamaica currently has 830 valid abstraction licenses, with total license volume that exceeds 2.3 billion cubic meters. Actual usage sits at approximately 1 billion cubic meters per year. Madam Speaker, the gap between licensed and used is not evenly distributed across the island. In some of our aquifers, we are already extracting at levels that raise concern. This government is committed to integrated water resource management, not just measuring what we have, but actively protecting it. Our Water Resources Master Plan, tabled in 2022, is now being updated to account for current demand pressures. This is the blueprint that guides where infrastructure gets built, how water is allocated across agriculture, industry, and domestic use, and how we respond to the increased pressure on our sources. Jamaica is committed to having this tool current and operational. Madam Speaker, for note, we are carefully managing our water resources, fully cognizant that water scarcity affects women disproportionately, as many households in Jamaica are indeed female-led. The graphic in front of you shows the relative female population to water source availability. So this also has to guide our investment approach. Madam Speaker, one of the most important things we are doing this year through the WRA is installing technology that allows us to see problems before they become crises. The WRA, in collaboration with the Met Service of Jamaica, is rolling out a long-range, wide-area network called LoRa One in a phased 3-year program. Hundreds of field sensors and network gateways will capture real-time data on groundwater levels, river flows, and rainfall across the island. Even in our most remote off-grid communities, this data will flow into centralized platforms with advanced analytical tools. Decisions are only as strong as the data that informs them, and this initiative ensures that Jamaica is operating with the best possible information in real time. Madam Speaker, we expect this initiative to be transformative, and it strengthens Jamaica's ability to detect early signs of drought, monitor flood conditions as they develop, and respond with greater speed. Madam Speaker, this initiative represents a shift from periodic data collection to continuous real-time monitoring, placing Jamaica in a stronger position to manage its water resources proactively in an increasingly climate-impacted environment. Madam Speaker, we would have seen the need for this in the recent flooding associated with Hurricane Melissa. I want to congratulate the team at WRA for the role that they would have played in informing decisions being made at the national and parish level as it related to flooding, especially in areas such as Content, Chigwell, and indeed Newmarket. Building on the lessons from the recent flood events, including Hurricane Melissa, the WRA is taking decisive steps to strengthen Jamaica's preparedness in some of our most vulnerable communities. To this end, the authority is finalizing a comprehensive project proposal to secure external funding for the establishment of an early warning system in Port Maria, a town that has experienced repeated and severe flooding over the years. While Port Maria is not an isolated case, it is a highly vulnerable community that experiences major flooding every 2 to 3 years, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, monitoring and data will only work if we have the right legal authority to act. It is for that reason the WRA has identified real gaps in the WRA Act, as well as the Floodwater Control Act, and we have commenced our review of that process. It is important to note that we have published the notice inviting submissions of no objection to the amendments we intend to pursue in the Sunday Gleaner published and Observer published on April 26. To note, Madam Speaker, and just briefly, Jamaica has successfully secured the bid to host a second staging of the island's Water Congress, a high-level international forum convened by the International Water Resources Association. Madam Speaker, this Congress will bring international experts and policymakers to our shore and will be held in Montego Bay in December of this year, Madam Speaker. That deals with how you manage the resource generally. Madam Speaker, once the WRA has protected and allocated the resource, the National Water Commission and the Rural Water Supply Limited take it from the source to the tap. The NWC serves our urban and semi-urban communities, and the RWSL reaches the rural communities that the main utility network does not cover. Together, they're the delivery engine of the water sector, and as such, I will outline the plans for the year ahead. Madam Speaker, potable water access currently reaches approximately 90% of households. With this administration committed to 100% by 2030, Madam Speaker, your government is building the infrastructure to meet this aspiration. The NWC currently operates over 700 water supply systems, serving more than 550,000 customers island-wide. On an annual basis, the NWC produces in excess of 322 million cubic meters of water and treats approximately 23 million cubic meters of sewage. The scale of the operation is significant. The challenges within it are equally significant, and the investment required to fix these challenges is what this year's budget seeks to address, as well as budgets to come. Madam Speaker, according to a recent World Bank study, Jamaica requires US $5 billion investment in the water sector to meet this ambition. Madam Speaker, the significant impact of Hurricane Melissa on both infrastructure and operations, the NWC demonstrated strong resilience and responsiveness. The NWC restored water supply to over 90% of customers by December 31st, 2025, and supported by expanded water trucking operations, temporary supply arrangements, and coordinated field interventions. As at April 2026, I'm happy to report, Madam Speaker, that approximately 99% of facilities have been restored to operational status, with the majority reconnected to the national power grid. Ongoing works are being undertaken to address remaining facilities requiring additional intervention and to restore pipelines in remote communities that were affected by land slippage. Madam Speaker, this performance underscores the government's capacity to respond effectively to national emergencies and to maintain service continuity under challenging conditions. That is the result of planning, not an accident. Madam Speaker, I will be direct about one of the most serious structural problems in Jamaica's water sector: non-revenue water. NRW that is produced and treated and pumped but never reaches a paying customer. NRW drives up energy costs, constrains available supply, and makes NWC financially unsustainable if left unaddressed. Madam Speaker, NRW is acknowledged as a crisis that we must fix. The island-wide NRW reduction program is valued at some US $340 million and will be phased over 11 years. It will target reduced NRW from 71% to 30%. It is already in procurement through international competitive bidding. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has an NRW target of 30% by 2035. The annual financial return is clear: 10.7 billion, comprising 7.7 billion in additional revenue at current tariff rates from improved billing and collection, and $2.8 billion in annual electricity savings, and $167 million in chemical cost savings. Madam Speaker, we are already seeing these benefits in Kingston and St. Andrew and Portmore. The case for taking this program island-wide is not complicated. Quite frankly, it pays for itself. Madam Speaker, in the just concluded financial year, the government, through the NWC, made significant strides in expanding access to reliable water services, particularly within rural and underserved communities. Through the implementation of the rural water supply improvement projects, which were valued at 1.1 billion, service delivery and reliability were enhanced for more than 133,000 Jamaicans island-wide. Additionally, approximately 14,000 persons across more than 20 communities gained access to piped water for the first time, representing meaningful progress towards universal service coverage. These communities included Spicy Hill in Trelawney, Lancewood, Shaw Park Heights in St. Ann, Runit, Charlie Gallant and Middle Quarters in St. Elizabeth, sections of Mason Hall in St. Mary, and sections of Orangefield in St. Catherine. Madam Speaker, for those 14,000 Jamaicans, last year was not a policy document. It was the year that water came. Madam Speaker, the government would have also completed and started a raft of projects throughout its agenda, and it is circulated in your varying WhatsApp chats and by email. But I will highlight a few, even understanding the time constraints. We would have completed the Old Pepper to Gutters transmission main at a cost of $331 million. Places like Miketown and Coleyville and Bonita Heights in Manchester would have benefited from investment. Cataboo, Runit, Middle Quarters, Rhine Park, for instance, Rhine Park in St. James would have benefited from $54.5 million, impacting 10,000 residents. Madam Speaker, we would have completed work on the Jacksontown pipeline project, benefiting 2,500 residents. Madam Speaker, we would have completed work on the Port Royal pipeline replacement project with $533 million invested, impacting 2,000 residents. Madam Speaker, we would have commenced the work on the Ferry to Rock Pond pipeline, which will impact 3 constituencies of Western St. Andrew, West St. Andrew. That project is slated to benefit 26,000 residents, Madam Speaker. We would have completed a Castleton pipeline project at a cost of $25.1 million, impacting 3,000 residents. Lancewood pipeline project at $6 million in St. Anne, Madam Speaker. We completed the Jacksal to Landover pipeline at a cost of $370 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we would have done work in every single parish across the country, Madam Speaker. And whether it was the Kenilworth pipeline in Hanover at $360 million, Madam Speaker, or Kingdom Hall in St. Elizabeth, or the Carter Walk wastewater project in Portland, Madam Speaker, or if you went to the west in Egypt Gardens in Westmoreland, or if you looked at the pipeline replacement in Frome and Bulstrode at $15 million, Madam Speaker, we can go through a long list of projects. And you know, you never want to forget places like Gordonwood in Clarendon or the Newland area of St. Catherine, Madam Speaker. But we could go on, and I see the time ticking. And that's just what was done. We are coming to what is to come. No. Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my apologies, sir. Yes. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the map of major works being undertaken is indeed before us. The NWC continues to enhance its operational capacity through targeted investments and fleet expansion, equipment upgrades, and energy efficiency initiatives. The acquisition of specialized vehicles, including Vectorjet units, pickup trucks, and water trucks, has strengthened the NWC's ability to respond to operational demands. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that these investments in operational efficiency came because the Commission is well run by a solid board. And pre the last financial year with Hurricane Melissa, we had a streak of 3 years with a marginal surplus, the first in NWC's history. Mr. Speaker, the water sector is Jamaica's biggest and single largest consumer of energy. The NWC has seen its electricity bill in 1 month exceed $1 billion Jamaican dollars, Mr. Speaker. That is not sustainable, especially with rising fuel prices globally. The hurricanes we have faced in recent years have made something else clear. Continue. When the power goes down, the water stops. Energy resilience and water security are inseparable. Mr. Speaker, we are fixing it. The NWC and Rural Water Supply are both pursuing targeted investments to bring energy costs down. Rural Water Supply has continuously worked to integrate renewable energy into water supply systems. For 2025 to 2026 financial year, Rural Water Supply has completed the installation of 3 new locations, one in Freehill, Northwest St. Anne, Bunkers Hill in Northern Clarendon, and New Eden in West Portland. The NWC has advanced its energy management strategy through the completion of several projects, but one I will highlight is the Forest Hills Solar Photovoltaic project valued at $81.5 million, which already in its first year has provided savings of $14.1 million, Mr. Speaker. The energy efficiency projects are on a table being presented for colleagues here, but just in summary, the 13 projects highlighted will be executed at a cost of $885 million, but expect to bring annual savings of $322 million to the National Water Commission, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Rio Cobra water treatment plant, valued at $92 million, is in construction and will deliver 15 million gallons of water per day by May 2027. To put this in context, in the worst drought recorded in Jamaica in 2022, Kingston and St. Andrew Portmore and Spanish Town were short 12.5 million gallons a day supply relative to demand. This project will supply that area with 15 million gallons a day. That closes the gap and provides a buffer, even in what was our worst drought. And this is on track for completion in May 2027. And remember, yes, the commitment still stands. The commitment to ensure that the community in the area benefits from the extraction and that the water does not bypass the residents of the area. As we would have done in St. Elizabeth at the Pepper Wells, we ensured that the community in and around the area was connected. The commitment stands, ma'am. I come into Sligo. Madams, Mr. Speaker, the Western Water Resilience Improvement Project is the single largest infrastructure program being undertaken by the National Water Commission. It represents a total investment of approximately $170 million in this phase and involves the design and construction of approximately 65 kilometers of new large diameter ductile iron potable water pipelines across 3 strategic corridors in Western Jamaica. Heavy construction commences this week, Mr. Speaker. The project covers 3 critical transmission corridors. The first runs from Martha Bray to Bounty Hall in Trelawney, strengthening water transmission capacity in one of Jamaica's fastest growing agricultural and residential areas. The second runs from Greenwood to Montego Bay in St. James, securing a reliable supply to Jamaica's second largest urban centre and the engine of our tourism economy. The third corridor runs from Lucy to Negril through Hanover and Westmoreland, ensuring dependable delivery to communities along the western coast and to Negril, one of the country's most important and internationally recognized tourism destinations. Together, those corridors serve the 4 parishes of Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. This pipeline ranges from 500 to 800 millimeters. It is the largest pipe infrastructure investment since the Yalas pipeline. And, Mr. Speaker, the pipes are currently being cleared at the wharf in Montego Bay. I'm pleased to report that these pipes are indeed here. The WWRIP will directly address the most persistent and consequential challenges facing the water system in Western Jamaica: aging infrastructure, high non-revenue water losses, inadequate pressure, and a network under growing strain from population growth, tourism expansion, and climate variability have long undermined water security in this region. And though the benefits of this project are well known, my own experience with this project is precisely why my support is firmly behind the NAR bill, which will be debated later today. This was declared an emergency when the pipes ran dry in 2023. And in following the process faithfully, sticking to the law, and working on this day in, day out, including members of the Water Policy Unit and NWC working weekends, it took 3 years to get the pipes here. That is what the current structure took, and that is with complete focus on this project and bringing in experts in procurement and otherwise, just to be abundantly clear. Mr. Speaker, the water storage infrastructure that serves Jamaica today was largely built more than a generation ago. It has served us well, but time and population growth have outpaced it. Our population has expanded, our weather patterns have shifted, and what was adequate then is simply not adequate now. The government, through the NWC, will prioritize investments aimed at improving water storage capacity and system resilience. Central to this effort is a proposed upgrade of the Hermitage Dam, which is estimated at US $250 million, which will involve a comprehensive technical assessment of structural integrity, sediment levels, and eventual capacity enhancements. Complementing this initiative is a planned review which is underway of the Mona Reservoir to determine the appropriate size of an expansion of this facility as well as necessary rehabilitation works. The third pillar of our capacity increase program is indeed the construction of the Rock River Dam in Clarendon. Mr. Speaker, at the community level, the NWC has identified critical storage tanks which are necessary to strengthen secondary storage and will be expending $7 million this fiscal year to increase storage at points of elevation benefiting communities. Production capacity, Mr. Speaker. The NWC has also enhanced its emergency response capability through the deployment of potable water treatment units, strategic partnerships with private suppliers to supplement water availability during drought conditions and supply disruptions. But, Mr. Speaker, new treatment capacity is also being pursued with the intended development of water treatment plants at Roaring River in Westmoreland and at the Rio Bueno through PPPs, which the government has engaged the IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, to work with us to ensure that we get the best competitive offer. We will further complete the engineering and planning works that will allow for the upgrades and expansion of the White River Treatment Plant, the Martha Brae Treatment Plant, the Great River Treatment Plant facilities. This will add some 30 million gallons daily to the North Coast. Mr. Speaker, we intend to pursue the projects associated with national expansion of Jamaica's storage capacity and new production capacity through NARA. This presents the opportunity to truly increase our resilience in the water sector. Mr. Speaker, further critical infrastructure to be undertaken with NARA include the rehabilitation and replacement of the Yalas Negro River raw water pipeline, which will address aging infrastructure and improve supply reliability to the Kingston metropolitan area. Mr. Speaker, colleagues should be aware of the Greater Mandeville Water Supply Project. This is being undertaken at a $2.7 billion cost. This year, we have $517 million slated to be invested. As we continue that project, we expect water losses in Mandeville to go below 50% by next fiscal year, Mr. President, significantly improving states. Now, the capital program, this is where colleagues tend to place a lot of energy and discussion. Hopefully time will allow me to go through as many of the projects as possible. This year, Mr. President, we will focus on the following systems. Mr. Speaker, the upgrade of the Itabaral Jordan Well systems at a cost of $60 million, and we're nearing completion on this, and this will bring benefits soon. The Black River Town Center to Arlington Parity Pipeline at a cost of $216 million, Mr. Speaker. We will complete work in Dornoch, Trelawney, and the Barron Hill Reservoir replacement at a cost of $86 million. The pipeline work will be a further $106 million. The technical start work for Rock River Low Ground Clarendon is already underway at a cost of $10 million. Sorry? Cheers. The Morant Bay Springfield to Seaford Morant Bay upgrade works will commence at a cost of $320 million. Improvements in the Savannah Lamar Township at a cost of $10 million. South Manchester, Grovetown to Cross Keys, $179 million, Mr. Speaker. Wakefield to Bunkers Hill in Trelawney, phase 2 at a cost of $90 million, Mr. Speaker. Christiana Spalding, 2 meetings, changing that line at a cost of $13 million. The line to Moravia at a cost of $90 million, members. The Juno Crescent, the completion of the Juno Crescent well development and lines associated with same at a cost of $80 million, Mr. Speaker. The line in Magati to Newton, that transfer pipeline will be completed this fiscal year at a cost of $44 million. The the Rhine Park water supply in St. James. Very important line. Procurement is complete. That will benefit from $78.6 million, member. Discovery Bay, Rosemount, Camelot, that line will see $45 million of investment this fiscal year, Mr. President. We will be investing a further $128 million in replacing the pipeline that runs along the Santa Cruz bypass, which has heavy line losses as well. Parnassus well upgrade system is projected to spend $96 million this year. We are doing some work on the Queen Heights system as well. We're doing work in Burnt Savannah at a cost of $84 million. We're doing work on the Grants Level well in Port Antonio at a cost of $10 million. We're upgrading the line in Yallas White Horses at a cost of $102 million, members. Yes, sir, at a cost of $102 million. Yes, member. Madam Speaker, the capital works list is extensive, but I will circulate to members. But there is no parish that is left out. But there are 9 projects that are pulled out of the sheet, which I think is important to mention. South Trelawney is on a larger capital project, member, so I will come to that in a second. But on the existing capital works, Mr. Speaker, there are 9 projects that have been the source of much social discomfort. And for that reason, we have prioritized works in these areas. This includes upgrades of the West Kingston water distribution, including the lines in Tivoli and Denham Town, which are severely degraded. Upgrades of the Duhaney Park water distribution network, which have been the source of much contention in recent weeks. The St. Benedict's Heights lines, that is a community that was done in Operation Pride and lines never laid, Mr. Speaker. Essex Hall in West Rural St. Andrew, Walker's Wood to Breadnut Hill in St. Anne, Mount Diablo and Top Hill in St. Catherine Northeast. The Sligoville distribution lines, Mr. Speaker, Rose Heights distribution line in central St. James, and Retreat to Top Hill in Western Westmoreland. These have all been the source of significant social pressure, Mr. Speaker. And the NWC will invest $1 billion cumulatively in these projects over the course of the next 12 months. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to go into geographic information systems and the strength of the residential and MSME amnesty, but I will state very clearly that we have processed over 15,000 customer requests, and the amnesty facilitated over 9,500 customers who were cut off before and facing the burdens of debt, having debt of over $781 million lifted from them and being reconnected. And it is a program that we are particularly proud of, Mr. Speaker. I will do my best to run through pretty quickly. Mr. Speaker, over the last financial year, Rural Water would have completed projects in Rocky Point, Brandon Hill, Bunkers Hill, the Mother Floor System in Manchester, New Eden and Cascade in Portland, Top Road in St. Andrew, East Rural, Free Hill in Northwest St. Anne, Watermount Phase 2 in St. Catherine, and Lapland in St. James. We would have also done works with our schools at the New Gardens Primary School, Aberdeen High School, and indeed Mason Hall Primary School and Richmond Primary School. We would have expended over $450 million in the last fiscal year in closing these projects. In the current fiscal year, Mr. Speaker, just to read very clearly the projects that will be undertaken by the Rural Water Supply Limited through their capital projects, it includes... Yes, sir.
Just for clarity, about how long else do you have?
I can take 5 minutes and highlight the final sets of projects.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to be playing tit for tat, but the Speaker was very clear. She said that we are allowed our time plus for the ministers 15 minutes and for this side 5 minutes. We have exhausted the time.
Yeah, I think the member is going to wrap up now. So we'll just ask the member to, we'll ask the member, no, we'll ask the member to go to, we'll ask the member to go to his closing statement. No.
Minister, close.
Madam Speaker, just to announce that the projects that have long been announced and not executed will commence this year in Union Balaclava, Albert Town at the Ulster Springs in Trelawney, the Green Park to Bamboo Line in St. Ann, Mason Hall in St. Mary, Agwater Vale, and Port Morant, investing $36 million US, Madam Speaker. And in closing, last point I'd like to make, because I think it's a central commitment to the residents of Greenwich Farm, we will be closing the cesspool emptying facility, which has long been a source of pain to that community and affected the school. And we expect to start the construction this year. And that, I think that has been too long. And for the members that represent constituencies in Portmore, we've also started the design process for the relocation of the Greater Portmore sewage plant, as well as the sewering of many of the communities that have suffered. Sorry for going over time, Madam Speaker. I will finish in ministerial statements at a later date.
Members, while the minister is being congratulated by his colleagues, the central air system is giving some challenges in the parliament, so you may find that you are a bit warm. No, you may not remove your jacket. The gown is far more than the jackets. The speaker can operate without the gown. The gown is massive, heavy.